Hello, everyone. I'm here today with a message from Ceridwen, or the Lady of the Cauldron, as she calls herself. Some of you may know Ceridwen is a Welsh figure from Welsh mythology, specifically the Mabinogion. And she is famous for a story where she punishes Gwion, who is supposed to be stirring her potion and accidentally licks some of it and turns him into Taliesin after a long chase. We have spoken about this in other messages before. So today she's got a message for us. She can be very direct, so please don't take offense. It's just how she is. Um, so, Ceridwen appeared and she said, "You are being very self-pitying." And I said, "Yes, but we're kind of allowed to every once in a while, especially under the circumstances." And she said, "No, not really. There's no point in being self-pitying. You're here to help, and sometimes that's hard." And I asked, "Who are we supposed to be helping?" And her answer was, "Everyone you touch." All the times that were difficult in your life didn't matter. They're learning. You're the helper. You need to help. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it hurts, but it's your role. I said, "What do we do with all these feelings we have then? It's not very nice at the moment." And she said, "Look around you." Now, at the time, I was in a wood. So I rested my hand on a tree and looked around me. And Ceridwen said, "These are your friends." And I had a tickling sensation on my face at this point. And when I went to brush it off, thinking it was, my hair or something, it was a spider. And she said, "Every action you take, every piece of help you offer leaves an imprint in the universe like a footprint. Every one of your actions, however small, is a footprint the universe remembers." And I asked her to stay a while and talk so I could ask her some questions. And she said, "Of course." And I asked her what I needed to do because I felt an impasse. I felt very, very helpless and very far away from where people needed help. And she said, "You need to go out into the world and help people move on. Touch them with your presence and pass on knowledge and learning." And I said to her, "Well, I enjoy learning. That's half the point of being here, isn't it? Is learning." And she laughed and said that helps. And then my dog started barking at her, which thankfully she didn't take offense to. And I said to my dogs, "It's okay. She's with us, and her name's Ceridwen." And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And she said, "You are." And I said, "Well, I'm not Welsh." And she said, "You are." And I said, "Well, sort of, a very long time ago, but I do like Welsh men." And she laughed and said, "So do I." It's just bizarre, these sort of interactions these light-hearted interactions you can have with these otherworld beings. So you can still laugh and joke with them. And then she became serious again. And she said, "It's all true." And I said, "What is? What's all true?" And she said, "All the stories, they're all true." And I said, "Which stories?" And she said, "All the stories you know," meaning mythology, um, fables, ancient ones. She said all the Welsh ones. So she's talking about the Welsh triads, Mabinogion, all of those Welsh folkloric stories passed down in the oral traditions and then written down in early medieval times. She said all the folklore, all the Welsh stories, they are all true. So I'm assuming from that she's talking about the stories that she is featured in, but all the other stories within those, within the Welsh triads and the Mabinogion. Or no, it's not the Mabinogion, is it? See, I'm still pronouncing it wrong. I'm not Welsh. It's the Mabinogion. I do apologise to any Welsh speakers here. They're probably like clawing their eyes out at this point. Um, and I said to her after she said, they're all true. I said, I think I knew that already. And Ceridwen said, everybody knows deep down that it's all true, the magic, that it's all true, and that it all really happened. Everybody has this collective knowledge within them, even if they don't remember. And I asked her why it was that, especially at the moment, we're really able to feel and see Otherworld, and we're experiencing timeline glitches, and people are experiencing all sorts of rising in their spiritual and otherworldly awareness. And she said, because you need to remember now. You need to remember who you are, where you came from, and what has happened to you, i.e., the forgetting. So she's talking about what our souls are capable of, what humans are capable of. We need to remember who we are as beings and what we're capable of. And I said, how do we need to know? How do we know what to do next? And she said, just keep moving forward, and what is meant to happen will happen. Um, and I said, but some of us, I know I have in the past few weeks, some of us feel really stuck. And she said, just keep going. Just keep going. And even if you feel like you're stuck, even if you feel like you're not moving, sorry, I'm distracted because there's two enormous hawks flying around outside the window. Even if you you don't feel like you're making a difference and you don't feel like you're doing anything, just keep going. Just keep following your path and following your intuition, and everything will change around you. And she said, we are always watching. And so you need to listen so that you hear. And then my dog barked at her again. So she must have really emphasized this point about them always being present and trying to communicate with us very ardently with her energy, because it caused, even though my dog could see her, it caused him to react more to that. So she must have very forcefully said, we are always watching and you need to listen so that you hear. And she told me to tell you to go and read her stories. So go and read the stories about Ceridwen, and that she wants you to know that they're true. And she wants you to know, therefore, because she was a human person, what we are capable of. And what struck me at the time when I was speaking to her was that her story had parallels to my own experiences, and perhaps that's why she was more present for me. Because she, especially in her story about the story with Taliesin, was that she was trying to help her son. She was brewing this potion to try and help her son Morfran, who was, terribly ugly, and not very gifted or talented. You know, the culture she came from was a bardic culture, and he wasn't very quick. And so she was trying to make a potion to make him the most gifted bard and the most intelligent person. Um, and she said to me at this point, while I wasn't even saying this, I was thinking this. She said at this point, as I was thinking this, unintended consequences. And then she said, I was trying to heal Morphren, and my potion made Taliesin. So her actions were her actions. She was focused on what she was trying to achieve in her life as a human being to help her son. But what she did made something else happen outside of that that made one of the most amazing and talented and legendary people in Welsh mythology, who went on then to have a huge impact on the Kingdom of Rhaegar and was the bard for Urien of Rhaegar, who was an ally of King Arthur. And we would not remember his achievements if it wasn't for Taliesin, because if Taliesin hadn't written them down or hadn't made them up or made up the poems about Urien's escapades, we would not know so much about him, and therefore we wouldn't know so much about the Old North, and we wouldn't have had so much of our remembering of where we come from and how we used to be and how cultured and talented we were. And that was her point. She was saying she was focused on her path that was very particular about helping her son. But even though she was doing that, the footprint that it left in the universe created a whole nother thing that still has echoes now. So this is the point that she's making, that even though our actions seem small, they have a huge impact. And she said, it may seem dreadful now. Things may seem dreadful, but carry on with what you're doing and what feels right because it matters. And then she showed me in my mind's eye ripples on a pond, how that stone dropping into the water creates waves washing up on the shore, on the banks of the pond or the river, far, far away from the point the stone dropped in, and that has a different impact on those banks, and it happens under the water and it has an impact on the fish that are swimming through. So she was showing me a visualization of how the tiniest energetic input from us as the creators has much bigger ramifications that we don't even see or conceive of, and that they're important. So I really feel that Ceridwen is reminding us that even the smallest action in our lives creates a ripple effect in the universe. And don't worry if you feel like you aren't doing enough, you know, that you want to do more. If you're doing everything you can, and if you're doing not even everything you can, if you're doing what intuitively you feel is the right thing to do on your path in your life, that every action has a consequence you may not even conceive of. So listen to your intuition, listen to Otherworld. Ceridwen tells us, you know, that she is always watching, Otherworld are always watching, and that they're always trying to communicate with us, and that you need to listen so that you hear. So from this point on, Otherworld are asking us to slow down a little, to go out and see your friends in nature, because perhaps that puts us in the right place to heighten our awareness. And in the silence, of that place. Listen for the whispers that Otherworld is offering in advice. Listen so that you hear.